Oh, hello, everyone.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day. Welcome to another episode of Overlooked News on a nice Sunday night. How you doing, Z?
Doing good. I want to let everybody know that tonight we only pushed it back because we had prior arrangements for Mother's Day, and next Sunday we'll be returning usually back around 3 p.m.
Absolutely, yeah. So we got some interesting overlooked news to talk about. We're going to be talking about some interesting. Well, this shouldn't be that surprising to people, but I think it's always good to get into the specifics, specific right wing ties when it comes to our police. Then we're going to be talking about the KC Tenants Union, as well as Starbucks executives being angry that they're not getting meetings with President Biden. And then this was something you found. Say a little bit about what you found in terms of the National Endowment for Democracy.
So, the National Endowment for Democracy, or as we like to call him, Ned. Ned is involved.
Fucking Ned.
Ned is involved in has been come out to be involved in a lot of let's just say election fraud, to be at least and at worst funding of far right militias in other countries and insurgencies. So I'm gonna be going over that.
Yeah. So I guess we'll start with talking about police and what they've been up to. Sound good?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. So starting out with this, so Reuters did a very interesting investigative piece when it came to our police. Definitely recommend reading that article. It's a long article, but very informative. Essentially, what they found is that there are at least 5 police trainers that have been identified by Reuters whose political commentary has echoed not just extremist opinions, but have had actual ties to far-right hate groups like Oath Keepers. They were involved in January 6th, the Three Percenters, and the Proud Boys, right? So, which is very fascinating because I remember when January 6th happened and people were like, wow, cops are really being nice to these people. And everyone was talking about where it's like, yeah, because there are cops in this crowd, right? And this actually shows that, yes.
I think, didn't one of the cops get arrested that was undercover?
Yes, I believe, yes, that did happen. And
he was
a lot
black,
of
so there you go.
yeah, of course, there you go. Yeah, hierarchy there. And and a lot of ex-cops too, and which this talks about sort of ex-cops as well. So one of the people specifically who has been found, so 5 police trainers, well, there have been at least 5 police trainers that work for private organizations that essentially train police in addition to the training that they already get within the police department. So think about this for a second, right? A lot of your tax money goes to your local police department because when we look at where the resources are going, astronomically, police get a lot more funding than your fire department, your schools, your community parks, right? And so, but in addition to that, in addition to a lot of your tax dollars going towards your police department, they also go towards these private companies that then provide additional training to your police department, right? So they advertise their services to your local police department or city police department, and then they go and get this extra training. So at least 5 police trainers have been that run these, that are part of these private companies, have been identified as having far right extremist opinions, being part of the Oath Keepers, a hate group, as well as other 3%ers. And one of these people in particular has been Richard Whitehead, who has taught at least 5. Yeah, I know, that's a really interesting Whitehead.
I didn't mean to like make it like cut off, but that's too good. That's too good to be made up.
Exactly.
Dick Whitehead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we should just call him. So Dick Whitehead has taught at least 560 police officers, 85 sessions in 12 states over the past 4 years.
Oh my
Um,
God.
Right. And this is just one out of five, right? There
That they
have
know
been
of.
that they know of. So the other four people also have a very similar reach because there's a general website that actually advertises these additional training services. And then maybe the local sheriff will be like, oh, let's send some of our new cops over to them to learn from them. And I think it's important to realize that since these are private companies, there is a very lack of regulation in terms of what they could be training these cops to do because they're a private company, right? As fascist as our police departments can be, they are within the government. So there are some regulations. Whether or not they're enforced or not is a whole different scenario. But I think it's important to realize that these private companies that are providing additional training to cops do not have any of these regulations at all in place, right?
Exactly.
And so think of how scary that can be when we talk about how outsourcing has worked, right, all throughout. And so I wanted to just share something real quick that I think Common Dreams does a really good job of breaking down here, because I think and as I was saying to Z earlier before this, when we talk about defund the police, this is a issue that is usually not mentioned when it comes to the problems with our policing system. So let me just add this to the stream. Private trainers work in an unregulated industry that largely has evaded the heightened scrutiny of U.S. policing in recent years in the wake of high profile police killings of civilians. Trainers like those identified by Reuters, a half dozen police training specialists say, highlight a lack of standards and oversight that allows instruction that can often exaggerate the threats that officers face, making them more likely to respond with excessive force in stressful situations. U.S. law enforcement officers receive far less initial training at police academies than their counterparts in comparable countries, said Arjun Sethi, a Georgetown University adjunct law professor and police specialist. That opens immense commercial opportunities for private trainers to fill the void with ongoing training of active duty officers, often in a politicized manner that normalized bias policing against Black people and other communities, he said. Private trainers typically advertise their courses to police and sheriff departments, who often pay, as I was saying before, their officers to take them. But individuals can also seek out and pay for their courses on their own to satisfy government or department requirements for ongoing training. The courses vary widely in content and in price, from hundreds to thousands of dollars per attendee. State-based oversight institutions often call peace officer standards and training agencies set requirements for police training, such as the types of classes and minimum teaching hours that officers must complete. But the institutions have little power in most states to influence course content or set standards for private police trainers, in part due to budget constraints, a former police officer says. He said, unregulated police training is such a problem that in 2017 he found the California-based Institute for Criminal Justice Training reform. Cops who perceive a far-right trainer as authoritative and credible may end up adopting their ideology. Bad training is instilling bad behavior. And I think in addition to this, and this was found in Reuters as well, I think it's worth noting that the amount of actual police deaths for 100,000 officers have plunged from 81 out of 100,000 to 20 between 1970 to 2016. But in these trainings, a lot of these people are having them do these really intense things, life or death situations, instilling in them how everyone is out to get them and trying to kill them, right? So of course that's going to mess with their psyche. But yeah, Z, I wanted to bring you in on this because yeah, this is a very interesting part of this whole police misconduct piece.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and when we say five, that's the five that are known. So that that leaves like a unknown number of actual people who are doing this and like actually instilling these behaviors into a lot of the police forces. And that's not to say that a lot of police forces aren't already acting as gangs. However, like this going into the especially like that issue when the thing in the article when it talks about the fact that a cop might see that and see him as credible and authoritative, and the fact that this is like this big strong powerful man, you know. So I need to be this big strong powerful man so I can command the same type of respect as him. And you know, either whether it's with my baton or my gun, through some type of violence or coercion in the community, blackmail, you know, what have you. But another interesting thing that I think is that like you were talking about and we were talking about before is the fact of how underreported this is and how under investigated this is. I mean, even besides this article, we've had the FBI's even had like reports come out that that law enforcement is in the U.S. is infiltrated with white supremacists. So there's just there's a lot to be talked about, and this is part a huge discussion that needs to be had, especially since what we have predominantly white cops patrolling predominantly black and brown neighborhoods. So
Yeah. And I think this really shows that there's always this saying that people use. It's a terrible saying where it's like, it's just a few bad apples, right? And this shows that that's not the issue. It's not bad individual cops that is the issue. It's stemming from the top down. It's
the tree.
literally, yeah, it's the tree. It's the indoctrination that they get, right? I mean, I think it's fair to say that there might even be some people who decide to be I mean, some, right? Not all that really think they're, you know, they might think, okay, they may be propagandized even into doing it, right? They didn't start out evil, but they have been indoctrinated to do what they do, right? And so a lot of that is coming from the top. Um, right, yeah. And I think that's a really interesting part of that.
But Andrew, as well as the fact that you know we have like the fact that saying this is just a couple bad apples, but we also have the saying that the apple does not fall far from the tree. And if the you know so that's another saying a lot of people like to throw around, and that is a lot more what is indicative of this situation is the fact that the whole system itself is corrupt, and it is corrupting individuals and making them go out and you know not all the time making them go out, but there are a lot of people who are just brainwashed. Let's just be honest. There are a lot of people who are
Oh yeah.
brainwashed, and there are a lot of people doing the brainwashing. And
Yes.
bringing in an extra private trainer uh, is not helping the especially when this person probably is doing what they want more than likely because they're private, and they're showing police they can just get away with whatever they want to.
Exactly. I mean, I've learned more and more that look at any corrupt institution and there definitely has to be some sort of outsourcing involved in some private
Exactly.
contractor that is then capitalizing on this whole market that then is creating the
I
monsters
think
to
we have
begin with on the
I
ground.
think we have sections of the NYPD who go and train with Israel and train in
Yes.
Israel as well. And I mean, is that not a far right institution? I mean, I know that I could probably get in trouble for saying that just because of the because you know the BDS movement is such a hot topic in some circles that don't believe in freedom for Palestinians. But you know, we're going to talk about that anyways. And I mean, we have not, and we, I mean, let's just even go back to a couple weeks ago. We had our show on propaganda, which definitely go check that out. That's a really good. We go over like an hour's worth of cop
Yeah.
bullshit. And I want to point people to an article by Detective James Trainum. He's a former homicide detective, and he talks about how cops, you know, how police generate false confessions, and that's not uncommon. I mean, we literally are witnessing a modern day Gestapo, and
Yeah. No, for sure. For sure. And I think kind of like what I was saying, we talk one of the mainstream, I guess, policies or proposals when dealing with the misconduct of our cops is defund the police, right? Um, Essentially going off of if we just take away money and resources from them, then they will be less corrupt, right? And I definitely do support that in practice, but I think even if you defund the police, what we just talked about is not going to go away. The private contractors that train cops are still going to be there, right? And so I think that always needs to be part of the discussion as well. And I haven't heard any politician or anyone talk about that. I don't know. Have you, Z?
I've
Like,
not heard. I've not heard. I've definitely not heard like people talking about getting like like extracurricular white supremacist activities out of police forces,
or just like, yeah, reforming their training, or so that like, yeah, they don't have fucking white supremacists creating the curriculum. Like,
yeah, how like you would never ever, and I can 100% sure say that you probably would not be finding a liberal teacher, or even you would never find like anyone on the actual left, but you probably wouldn't even find a liberal.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Type of training.
For sure. You had a video you wanted to show?
Yeah, I wanted to share this video. Funnily enough, is by his name is, you might know him from a couple of movies in the early 2000s. His name is Romani Malco. But he actually made a video. When I was reading up about this, I was looking for some videos to watch, and lo and behold, no one's made a video about this on YouTube, except for like a couple, like this, especially these last couple years. Yeah. So, this actually was a pretty good video, I thought, and I wanted to share it. Let me see. He just goes over a couple of things that people don't usually think about when they're thinking about law enforcement and white supremacy, and I thought it was very interesting, especially coming from someone who's actually pretty not well known, but known enough.
Right.
There it goes.
About to explain how white supremacist groups became so deeply woven into law enforcement and our judiciary. I'm also going to explain what it means to be an anti-racist in this day and age. And lastly, I'm going to explain what I believe we need to do about it. What up, y'all? My name is Romani Malco. I am the founder of the PEP, and today we will be discussing white supremacy within our law enforcement and judicial system. My goal is to give you a better understanding of what we as an anti-racist population are actually up against, in hopes that it might help us devise the meaningful strategies to dismantle what I believe to be the most dangerous terrorist organization in the United States of America. In the event that this video was taken down, please request an invite to peprequest.com, where I will give you a link to a Google Doc so that you can download this video to your own device and upload it at will. Write that down right now, peprequest.com. We start with Larissa Moore and 4 of her law school colleagues. They did an investigation of the unsolved civil rights murders from 1946 to 1969. This investigation was done through a Syracuse University program called the Cold Case Justice Initiative. A very important piece of information that was uncovered during this investigation but has never been addressed by our government was that during the civil rights movement, one of the first orders issued to KKK members was to infiltrate law enforcement. They found hundreds of people who were victims of either police killings or killed by the Ku Klux Klan that have never been investigated thoroughly and are not on the FBI's list. And no one has any intention of ever investigating these murders. In 1991, a U.S. District Court judge found that Los Angeles sheriff's deputies had formed a neo-Nazi gang called the Vikings. The Vikings made it their duty to terrorize Black and Latino communities. But check this out, that same group of Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies that the U.S. District Court judge defined as a neo-Nazi gang terrorizing communities of color was defined by the police department officials as a harmless social group. Harmless. Keep in mind that 70 Linwood residents filed reports claiming that this harmless social group partook in systemic acts of shooting, killing, brutality, terrorism, house trashing, and other acts of lawlessness and wanton abuse of power, particularly against people of color. This neo-Nazi gang sounds like a very fine group of people. Here's another one. John Berg, a Chicago police detective who supposedly had ties to the KKK. I could not find a document or a photo to confirm his ties to the KKK, but I had to mention it, being that it was mentioned in a court of law. Starting in 1989, this dude was in and out of court for the torturing of Black men in Chicago. Not just him, there was an entire gang of Chicago detectives who worked under him. He was the ringleader. Hold up now, you can't just say torture. Torture can mean a lot of things. My wife and kids torture me. What do you mean by torture? A list was eventually compiled of 105 Black men who said that they were suffocated with plastic bags, typewriter covers. And for those of you who don't know what a typewriter is, think of it as the first BlackBerry, only a lot bigger. And then that came in a plastic case. Never mind. Other forms of torture included a hand-cranked electrical device which Detective Berg called his nigger box. There was a cattle prod and a violet ray machine, also known as a shock wand, all of which were used on the torture victim's genitals. Y'all want to keep talking about this? In addition, Detective John Berg would beat black men and teenagers into making false rape and murder confessions for which they would be convicted. But guess what happens in 1993? Detective John Berg gets taken to court again. But this time he was dismissed from the police force, was never charged, and continued to collect his police pension. The whole county was complicit. The officers, the lawyers, the judges, the politicians, they all knew about the torture rings but wanted to keep it covered up. At one point, 17 attorneys with 12 clients combined, who had all claimed to have been beaten by John Berg, submitted a petition requesting that the Cook County judiciary not be allowed to have any further involvement in their cases. The petition cited 3 of the 50 Cook County judges were former Chicago police detectives, 2 of which had worked under John Berg. 16 judges were former state's attorneys who had direct involvement with the torture cases, meaning 1, they accepted false confessions being beaten out of defendants, 2, partook in prosecuting people who were tortured into making false confessions, or 3, supervised the prosecution of those claiming to be torture victims by electric shocks to the genitals, constant strikes to the genitals, beatdowns and suffocation, and the list goes on. Another 6 of those judges had testified on behalf of John Berg at the police board hearing when the city tried to fire him for torture. And another 3 of those 50 judges had defended the city in these police brutality lawsuits. So you can see why these attorneys wanted their client's trial by a completely different set of judges, maybe even a completely different county. Every judge mentioned was somehow directly or indirectly connected to protecting John Berg during his torture lawsuits. But thanks to lone wolf officer Frank Laverty, John Berg was eventually prosecuted in 2008 for charges related to the torturing of 120 black men in the city of Chicago.
Yeah, and I just wanted to play a little bit of that video. That video is called White Supremacists in Law Enforcement and Racist Cops by Romani Malco, and y'all can go find that on YouTube. It's a very good video. Yeah, and that's just showing you how, like, and that's just Chicago. Like, you can only imagine how, like, complicit other people, like, other counties are, especially, like, in places where, you know, there's a lot of suburbs and a lot of...
I'm sure it's much better in Boston. You know,
oh, you know. It's just like one of the, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you like, especially you don't think about that, and that's in the north, like the place where it's supposed to be so nice and so great for black people, and it's just like in Latinos as well. And I like how, you know, these guys are just a harmless social group. Yeah, because you're white, you asshole.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I wanted to end this segment in topic with at least a little bit of hope. In terms of what I just found that happened in Boston, Austin, whole other side of the country.
That actually is good news. There's something like this is happening. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I guess on Saturday, I believe there was a Prop A ballot measure where if you voted yes, they would decriminalize marijuana in the city of Austin, Texas, along with getting rid of no-knock warrants. And so the results, I believe, this was not the
What's
final,
going on, Joseph? Welcome.
Yeah, it was around 83.88% that voted yes to decriminalize marijuana there and get rid of no-knock warrants versus 16.12% no. Here are the final results: 85.49% yes, 14.51% no, 67,809 total votes.
That is like an overwhelming mandate.
Yes. And I think it really just shows one way of creating change is ballot measures tend to work better, right? As opposed to politicians, because it's harder to frame ballot measures. I mean, you can, but it's harder to distort ballot measures when it's straight up like this is an issue and you can read what it's about, right? So I think that just shows
harder to do that.
Yeah, so I think that just shows when people say like, oh, you know, it's fringe to want to take away certain powers of cops, right? No, it's not. Like, no, it's not. But yeah.
No, most people don't agree with that. Like it really, especially since like people are starting to be like, wait, this affects everybody, and people want to put that into perspective. Okay, so think about a candidate running, particularly maybe last week, you know, like Nina Turner versus Chantel Brown, unfortunately. So if yes was Chantel was Chantel Brown, unfortunately, and no was Nina Turner, it's a blowout. That's a ridiculous blowout, and even in real life, because I'm pretty sure it was like 65-30 or something like that. But 83% is overwhelming, and if we could even ever imagine, like in this day and age right now, a candidate that got that, that would be insane. Like,
Right.
that would be like that's unheard of. You don't see that right now. Now, there's a place there. Now, one could say that if a candidate delivered, that could happen, but you're not going to see that because people have no trust in the government like that. People have trust more in themselves, as we should, and that's why we should be targeting ballots.
Absolutely. And I have said, I do think we as a network, and we'll talk about this more, but I think it would be great if we really got together a lot of different ballot issues and just around the time when people are voting on them come November, just keep track of how they're doing, because I think that's just a much better way to keep track of how things are systemically changing here.
I would like to actually, that the marijuana bill that before we pass on, speaking of marijuana, the medical marijuana bill, the most restrictive one in the nation, actually failed in my state last week. It did not pass the Senate. It was such milk toast. It was such a milk toast bill that I actually didn't want to pass.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't even have actual flour. You had to only use like edibles and vape, which would be fine, but you had to go to a doctor like every 2 weeks. It was just so restrictive and so your privacy. You were literally giving away your privacy to smoke.
Huh.
So I would like to do a ballot measure, and it wouldn't. And of course, if the people are doing it, we don't have to be as restrictive of these assholes.
Right.
So,
right.
And another thing about ballots, I think they're a lot more sure, because the fact is you have to get enough signatures for the ballot in the first place. So a lot of the times you already know like what you're up against in the first place, because you've been going from door to door, and and you can add up you can get the median of like the people who said yes and who said no.
Yeah. I mean, funding is always an issue, right? There's always going to be powerful interests that are going to try and distort a type of issue that is really helping people. We have that right now in Massachusetts going on with Prop 22. That is a ballot measure to try and make Uber and Lyft drivers permanent contractors. And so we're fighting that right now for people to vote no, so that doesn't happen and they can get full rights. But that's a whole, like in terms of healthcare benefits, but that's a whole other issue. But yeah, it still is tough, but there are less layers that are getting in the way of that, I guess. So yeah. So should we talk about Ned?
Yeah, let's talk about Ned. So let me try to open this page first before we get the National Endowment for Democracy, or NED, has been the Chinese Foreign Ministry actually has released Ministry of Foreign Affairs has released a document about the National Endowment for Democracy, which the National Endowment for Democracy, if you don't know, has been involved in a lot of regime change around the world. In fact, it's part of, you could say it's part of the CIA's arm to infiltrate countries in the guise of democracy, but they're actually, what they're doing is they're an institution that is swaying, who they're putting money into far right agendas, they're putting it into paramilitary agendas in those countries. And a lot of countries have been taking note of this. Some of these countries we've seen Bolivia, Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, Belarus, Libya, and Syria, and even Algeria. And that's just like the beginning of it. Now, the history of NED is that it was formed right after World War II, and it was supposed to go against the Soviet Union. So already we're seeing that it has an anti-communist, anti-socialist tinge to it. It's already trying to go against the second biggest world power at the time in the world. And it was, like I said, it is an arm of the CIA, from allegedly. Now, the United, as the article puts in here, what I'm about to share is that it says the fact that, I think that's wrong with let me stop sharing that. Okay.
Oh yeah.
I had share screen still on the background, so I had to. So I would say is that this intelligence agency was a public-private mechanism. So the National Endowment for Democracy is an NGO. It's a non-governmental organization, and but money is funneled through it from the CIA, and they usually support democracy abroad from financial support, like we're going over. And okay, zoom in a little bit.
Perfect. Yeah, it's a little better. It's still a little grainy, but yeah.
Yeah. And as early as 1991, the founder of the National Endowment of Democracy, Alan Weinstein, put it bluntly in an interview with the Washington Post that a lot of what they were doing was what the CIA had done 25 years ago, and that Ned was actually a second CIA. And I think that Ned goes under the radar a lot. What we're gonna do is how they've instigated color revolutions and state power. Now, in 1999, in August, the Washington Report published an article called "How We Help Solidarity Win," pointing out that Ned had provided financial support for the Polish Solidarity Fund to help them overthrow then the Polish government, heralding drastic changes in Europe. And as recently as 2000, Ned financed and instigated the Velvet Revolution in Serbia, which overthrew the Milosevic government. In 1999 and in 2000, Ned funded the Serbian opposition with 10 million and 31 million US dollars respectively for its rapid expansion. Ned also helped the secret training group of college students before handing them over to leadership in a student group called Otopar Resistance that later instigated riots. So we see that Ned causes social unrest. And if you go on their website, you would never think that. You would never see this. All you see is a diverse group of people promoting a diverse world and promoting global what they call solidarity, but where they're actually funding is money to buy bombs and fund usually far right agendas. Usually agendas that are completely anti-government. Now let's go. Now here we are. More recently, and this is actually in the news right now, as you can see, in 2004, during the Orange Revolution in Ukraine, the United States offered $655 million to the Ukrainian opposition through Ned and other organizations. When massive anti-government demonstrations broke out in 2013, Ned funded as many as 65 NGOs in the country and even provided large funds to pay wages to each and every protester. So Ned can pay protesters in other countries, but they can't even have that in the U.S. They don't even they don't try at all to promote democracy in their own country. Ria Novus reported that Ned had invested 14 million US dollars in the project, which led to the large demonstration in 2014, the Maidan massacre, which was the Azov and Sabov paramilitary groups that eventually became part of the Ukrainian government, which we're seeing today. Once again, I know for the people out there who want to, rage quit and say, "Oh, you support Russia." No, there was an invasion by Putin, and he pulled the trigger when he shouldn't have. However, he was baited. And I mean, if you keep going down, you see it. You see from Libya to Yemen to Algeria. Ned has funded so many of the revolutions and the revolutions and even the Arab Spring. There's been so many things that Ned has played. Even Venezuela, that groomed anti-Morales forces over the years between 2013 and 2018. Ned in the U.S. aid provided by various means $70 million to oppose Maduro Morales. And remember, Evo Morales ended up hiding in Mexico for a little bit. And then he came back, and that actually eventually became it all connects because Elon Musk then says we'll coup whoever we want over the Bolivia situation. So you see that these are the people that are behind these things, who are donating to Ned to donate to these countries to overthrow them and take their resources. So I wanted to share that, and I have one more thing to share that going over that. Is this okay? And if you go because it's really actually very hard to find anything about the National Endowment for Democracy. Like if you're actually looking for anything negative, you have to actually go through books or you have to go through research. What I ended up doing was I went through the National Endowment for Democracy and I actually put it on Twitter just to see what we could go in and look at and see if what they've been donating to. So let me well, if you go here, you see that China's been releasing this. And as you see, they pose as a as you see, they pose as a, they're going in, they want to be on the front lines of freedom. But whose freedom? And at what cost? I just wanted everyone to see how Ukrainian Democrats at risk.
Yeah.
I just want people to see like how they pose, but what they're actually doing behind this, what they're actually doing behind this guise is funding far right military groups.
Yeah.
630 projects in 85 countries.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
And I think for anybody here who might be skeptical of any sources related to Chinese sources, right? I also want to bring up that it's actually also been found from the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library that the National Endowment for Democracy has cooperated with the CIA, especially particularly in the 80s when, as you know, the United States was imperialism when it came to Latin America was at a peak. And one document actually showed that one of the senior Freedom House officials, which is actually very much works with the National Endowment for Democracy, and this is according to Common Dreams, Leo Chain actually worked with CIA officer William Casey when it came to drafting opinionated articles about what was going on politically in El Salvador. Right. So there is blatant cooperation with CIA officers, even stemming back from the 80s when it comes to how to portray what is going on in other countries. And I think what's really dangerous about this is that the National Endowment for Democracy claims that they support independent media. If you even go on their website, I'm going to try and share this in a second because I think this is very fascinating. If you go on their website, it shows right here, the National Endowment for Democracy is an independent nonprofit foundation dedicated to the growth and strengthening of democratic institutions around the world. And even if you go into their, Ned makes more than 2,000 grants to support the projects of non-governmental groups abroad who are working for democratic goals in more than 100 countries, right? So I think one of the things that's really interesting, if you actually go on their website, is that they support quote unquote indie media. And the whole purpose is to make it look like presenting indie media, but that is actually parroting State Department talking points, right, with an indie media front. And one thing I found really interesting is that that Congress actually almost made a law stating that the CIA could not have anything to do with Ned. However, one of the CIA high-ranking people actually according to an aide, knocked on a congressional person's door and said, "No, you need to let us work with Ned." Right. And so one of the things that they actually win against was Russia in the 80s actually was working on passing legislation, similar legislation to what we have here, where you cannot have foreign influence in elections, right? When it comes to fundraising, you cannot fundraise from a foreign entity. Russia was trying in the 80s, and I think it did definitely pass, trying to do the same thing. And Ned actually was pushing articles saying how dictatorial Russia was for proposing that, even though like
it was too late.
Yeah. So, and here we are trying to say that Russia influences our elections when we want to talk about how much America, the United States, has influenced their power structure there. So it's just fascinating how blatant it is, but how subtle it is, this Ned institution is. And it's just one of those hidden powers where when you look at so much corruption that is happening, it can be stemmed back to them.
And I mean, you know, just as well as I do that NGOs, non-governmental organizations, can do a lot of things that the government can't do. They do a lot of things in the background that and not even just the background, they can do things publicly that the government would not be able to have their hands in. So the government uses them and funds a lot of them to, you know, achieve its aims.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, this is just one of those things where, you know, they recently did a report on this, right? That as you said, the Chinese ministry, but this has been something that has been known for years and it has been documented. And like you said, you can't find this on like CNN or MSNBC, but if you actually go look through documents, you can find proof that this is something that happens.
This is one of those things that if literally, I mean, because like you said, a lot of people are gonna be like, oh, there's China, blah 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 blah, which
right.
Yeah, China has a lot of. Of course, there's going to be misinformation coming out of China. It's not. We don't see them as an ally. So
they have an agenda. They also have an agenda, right? Like
everyone has an agenda. However, when it comes to the constant imperialism since the end of World War II that we've been doing, that can't be unseen, and especially across the world, and it's in books. Like like you were just saying, like you can't find this on like mainstream liberal media, especially like you're definitely not going to find it on liberal media. But it's just insane that you have to actually do some. You can't even find it on the internet barely. You have to, like I said, you have to go through like Twitter. Like that's insane. So,
but you can find it in documents in the Reagan Presidential Library.
Exactly, you have to go back.
Ooh, they are radical. They are far left. So I mean,
exactly, they have to be. They're kooks, bro. They got their tinfoil hats on, and we. Well, I mean, yeah, now, but but yeah, that it's sitting there in records. So,
absolutely, yeah. So, wanted to talk a little bit about tenant unions.
Kansas City.
Yes, Kansas City Tenants Union. So, Kansas City, Missouri, they've got a tenants union that has been making a lot of progress lately, and
yes,
it's great. Hi, you're on TV. Okay, bye. Yeah. So, so yeah, I don't know if you want to. We can maybe start by showing Nick's video. Or...
we can. You go ahead if you want to go ahead and share that. So if you don't know what a tenants union is, a tenants union is a group of tenants that educate the others that live around them about their rights as renters and their rights as owners of their space and what they can do to fight back against unfair practices of landlords or people who or the banks. And 10,000 people there's like in Kansas City are under this new tenant union that just formed, and that is amazing. So when we think about like things like our home, our work, we have like I feel like there's a new consciousness rising when it comes to the way people are starting to think about the way they are at home or in their workspace. They want to have respect at the work, but they also are realizing that this is their home and they don't deserve to be kicked out. Oh, Jake.
Yeah. So real quick, wanted to just. Okay. So yeah, and I think so. A tenant union is really just an organization of people who come together to get things done collectively that they couldn't get done alone. I always get bombarded by these ads. And so I think one thing to keep in mind is that there's no regional or national organization that oversees tenant unions the way the National Labor Relations Board does. But however, this is, I think, this through a lot of work and activism, the Kansas City Tenants Union has really gotten to be a source where a lot of people go to for support. It kind of almost is like this mutual aid organization, which I find fascinating. And so
particularly, I wanted to mention, I wanted to mention that, like, it seems like that's one thing that it seemed like the in the spirit of like the Black Panthers, the way they would take on the like you said, it's not just them, they're taking on the community's problems, because the community's problems are their problems. So they're coming to them for help, and they're getting answers and actually getting things that actually work. Like, because every time they go to a politician or go to someone who says they have the answers, they still get shit on.
Yeah. And so I really like this local article. It says, it's easier than you think to form a tenant union in Kansas City. All it takes is to get started is having some conversations with your neighbors about what changes they'd like to see in your building, neighborhood, or even the city as a whole. Tenant unions provide a bigger voice than each tenant can have alone. It's all about tenants having more power and people having more of a voice in how they live and where they live. And so while it's not required to seek official recognition for your union, men attending groups in Kansas City turn to KC Tenants for support in their organizing efforts. The group has helped tenants canvass their neighborhoods, attend community hearings on new development projects. And so hopefully this is just an example of many other places that can develop tenant unions in this sense, because at least if you can have a group of people getting together to advocate for each other in order for better living conditions, like that is just amazing. So,
well, people need to realize how landlords are just making cash off an asset that is just sitting there. Like, there should be land is. Oh, is that I was hearing something. Land is like, you shouldn't be able to make money like that off of just an asset. Like, and you generally, your rent is paying for most of the damage and shit like that. That usually, even when you have something broken, you're already paying for it, your rent and stuff like that. It's complicated and it sucks. But,
absolutely.
But people can fight back, and yes, landlords are parasites.
Yes. Even the good ones.
Good landlords. I mean, it's so frustrating. People bring that up. It's like, no,
I know, right?
So this person, every time they raise your rent every year when they don't have to, they're a good landlord. Okay,
right. The pendulum is so not in our favor when it comes to
have your landlord have a fucking bad day, like a bad financial day, and let's see if your good landlord is a good landlord. He'll be at your door asking.
Exactly.
You'll be paying for his kids and his wife and shit like that before you know it.
Yeah. So I guess Nick actually recorded some videos. They had, I guess, a rally this weekend.
Nick, Socialist MMA from Twitter, as most people know, he's a resident of Kansas City.
Yes, and of course part of RBN.
Oh my God, this comment, that's so fucked up.
Oh,
that's
renting out a bathroom.
How fucked up is that? And people take it because people need shelter. It's like the studio.
Yeah.
It's like the studio apartment. Like, it's like, let me pay $7,000 for like a room.
Exactly. So let's just give a little bit of a taste of some of the speeches that were happening this weekend. But yeah, it'd be great to interview some of these people who are part of the tenant unions, just to see how they really are able to get the community together and reach out.
Yeah.
Play. They'll pay up our city's leaders to get their sweet little deal. And it can feel inevitable that people like me will have to sacrifice our mental health, our physical health, our babies, our well-being, our humanity for this violentness. It can feel inevitable that a gorgeous gathering like this one won't be possible in a few years, because the profiteers will have turned us into ghosts. Comrades, we are here. And
That's beautiful.
we are a union. We are here assembled as a union to say none of that is inevitable. None of that is inevitable. And not if we organize. I've been organizing with Midtown Tenants Union, the first neighborhood union in KC. This year, we are going to build 5 more neighborhood unions like MTU all over the city, and we are going to organize 10,000 tenants. We are going to organize 10,000 tenants into our citywide union.
So yeah, imagine being a landlord there.
Exactly, and just like Jason just said, she just said, "Comrade." She did the thing. She did. That was really cool. And can I say, all the shirts, all the yellow shirts, like everyone, the uniforms, like everyone was there dressed accordingly in their uniform, and like that was powerful. And that speech was really powerful. That was so cool, and that made me really happy.
And, you know, I think what also makes me happy is that this is not something that's happening in like New York. I mean, it'd be great if it was happening in New York City, but this is not happening in a place where people necessarily think like, oh, this is such a left area, right? This is happening in the Midwest, Kansas City, Missouri, right? Yes, Kansas City is definitely to the left than, Missouri is as a whole. However, it's great to see that there's this type of activism and there is an appetite for this solidarity in places like in the Rust Belt Midwest.
I think that people like the unions that are starting to form are there people who are realizing that, yes, people have their politics, but how left and right aren't a thing when you have to go to work. And you have to people if you talk to people if you're talking to people on the level where they're at, as far as we work with somebody, you're like, look, your kids, you have kids, you take care of this, you have an A, you have a B, and that's why it's so hard. That's why it's so much easier to organize in face to face as well.
Yeah. And I think, and this is something I know that Nick has said in RBN as well, right? He lives in a place where he is forced to interact with people who are conservatives, right? And
I'm in the same. Well. That's my literally my whole this is.
yeah. South Carolina. That's not exactly a
exactly. So a lot of time, exactly. I would say it was the exact opposite, if I might say so myself. It's a leftist hellhole, but we just talked about a bill that you can't smoke weed passing, failing, and that was the compromise. But so yeah, and he's in the same predicament. The South is not known for unions, and it can be a curse word here. It can be a dirty word, but like we're seeing with this union, and we're seeing in Starbucks in Virginia as well, unions are starting to happen, and it's a huge deal when these things are starting to pop up in the South. Now I won't say it's not a huge deal in the North, but it's not this. But as far as the connotation of what a union does, I think people in the North have a little bit more of a understanding of what a union is, opposed to people who have come down here and gotten we're still underdeveloped here. We're not even we still have people. There's a couple of people who don't have internet here. You're able to propagandize people very easily here if you can cut them off. When you're able to cut them off. Hey, police.
Yeah.
So I just think it's really cool seeing this, and I hope to keep seeing these things. And I mean, the tenant, and I had no idea. It was just be like, hey, we're in a tenant union. Are we a union? All you got to do is be like, we're a union. Cool.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's so much more freedom to do that than having being at it. And I feel like that's way easier. The start, starting a renters union opposed to being at a job. Like you can just freely go talk to people when you're just walking around. So.
Mm-hmm. And I would definitely recommend checking out their website too, because they give a lot of good step-by-steps on how to really interact with your tenants, particularly with COVID-19. And so, yeah, and 10,000 people under tenant unions, according to that person who was talking that said comrades. So
awesome. I want to say Sorry. I wanted to make
No,
a
you
comment
got
about
this.
I want to make a comment about the comment. Yeah, the South is beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful place, but like the people can be very ignorant about things. But like the landscape of the South I love it. Like I love all the mountains and all the trees and stuff like that. Granted, a lot of companies are starting to come in and be like, in my area, and be like, okay, we're gonna cut this down and make it more, urban or modern or what have you. But I like it here. The people can sometimes be a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I do in the winter. I definitely do envy your weather. So
I envy you when I don't envy you when it is hurricane season. Sometimes it looks like terrible. Like it's like I didn't know hurricanes went up that far.
yeah, I mean, we don't hurricanes, at least where I am, aren't terrible, which is great. It's just more like a lot of snowstorms, which I guess I'll take that over hurricanes. But yeah,
Well, Felice says the South has been made to be ignorant. It's like, yeah, but that's like I said, if you can get people like apart the way we are, like you can get people apart and you can propagandize, you can get things in their head. And your neighbor lives like 10 meters away from you. In some cases, there are people who can't see their next door neighbor because there's so many trees between them. You can get ideas about people and things like that aren't necessarily true, and you just be looking out your window and thinking the whole world's trying to get you.
yeah, true. So yeah, getting close to the end of this stream, but wanted to bring up some kind of light, funny news when it came to. So I believe it was this past Thursday. A bunch of a bunch of workers at Starbucks met with Joe Biden, which I mean, he also met with George Floyd's family. And look what happened to what he's doing to police departments now, right? So I'm honestly not putting too much stock in that or too much hope.
Meeting with the president is not the end all. Is not like the end all be all to a movement.
Yeah.
In fact, it could be the end of your movement because that's one thing I've been very like scared about with about
Smalls.
But he's been holding it down now.
Right.
But it's scary seeing him meet with people like Kamala Harris and people like Biden. It's like, man, these people are literally just going to try to be like, that was us, and then make it way, way, way less of a compromise, make more of a compromise than it should be. So I hope that, but like he said, it's not him, it's the workers there. So I hope the workers you can see that. Like I hope, especially since it's New York.
Yes. So this is Mr. Steve J. Richetti, counselor to the president, office of the president, saying, so dear Mr. Richetti, I am reaching out on behalf of Starworks Coffee Company in response to the White House recent meeting with union organizations, which includes Workers United, to discuss their efforts to unionize our company. We are deeply concerned that, that Workers United, which is actively engaged in collective bargaining with us and trying to organize all our stores and 240K partners, was invited to the meeting while not inviting official Starbucks representatives to discuss our view on the matter.
It's wild when people try to say that the term collective bargaining doesn't even sound like a bad word. It doesn't even have that it's just like they're trying to collectively bargain. Yeah. Like they're people or something.
Yeah, exactly. And so here they go. And I think one of the things that just made me, somewhere in the article, they talk about how a lot of partners don't even want to unionize, right? And that they didn't represent how a lot of the partners or employers feel. And I'm like, dude, 85% of the elections that have happened at Starbucks they voted yes to unionize. Like, what are you talking about? Like, the cat's out of the bag. You all suck. Everyone knows it.
It's like, why would 1,000 why would hundreds of stores just as soon as they see one thing happen at one store, if it was Buffalo and then 3 others just did it, yeah, it'd be huh. But literally it's like a fire right now. It's just catching on and so
absolutely
they're just bullshitting.
Yeah. So I gotta head out really soon, but yeah, that was just, I feel like, a good light way to kind of funny way is how they're obviously frustrated with Biden, but yeah. So yeah, he probably didn't have any idea what was going on, Felice. He probably doesn't know who he's meeting with. He's just like, oh hey, what's
It's
up?
like she said that he was probably just trying to smell the coffee on them. Yeah, he probably was just like, what are all these kids doing in here? And he just starts sniffing them. But I think that Biden is trying to co-opt it. I think that the Democrats are trying to co-opt these union movements. I mean, what did they say? They said Biden was going to be the most pro-union president since FDR. It's like,
yeah,
just because he says unions doesn't mean he's pro-union.
right.
The word union comes out of his mouth and he doesn't shit talk. It doesn't mean he's for it.
And I think people always have to realize that even though Democrats have completely abandoned their union roots, they still do realize that they are the party that they can try and trick people into being pro-union. So of course they put lip service, because especially now they know that unions are becoming more and more popular. So that's essentially that.
Dems are very sneaky like that. They get very, very progressive and until election day, and then all that rhetoric goes out the window. It happens every time. Like they'll start being like, "Oh, we need to do this. Oh, we need to do that." And then as soon as like election day happens, and if they get voted, it's like, "Oh, yeah, I can't because like we have a supermajority, but like most of those people in the supermajority don't agree with me, even though they're on my same team, and I don't know what they would be on my team anyways if they didn't agree with me. Like especially in that kind of situation, like if." It's one thing to agree with somebody, but that's how you know these things are. It's like planned, because it's like I was talking the other day with before we get out of here. I was talking the other day with Felice about the fact that you see it's weird how when George McGovern got the election stolen from him in the 70s, you had that big switch with the Dixiecrats who were the racist Democrats who became Republicans. Why didn't Biden go? Was he told to stay? Because he is such a Republican still that he could like be the middle person between those two things. Like it confuses me. It confuses me that he would be like buddy with Strom Thurmond and people like that, right? And then he would stay on his Democratic side, even though he's such a Republican.
Yep, absolutely.
It's so strange, but that's something we'll get into another time.
For sure. So, yeah, Z, what do you have coming up?
I got Revolutionary Reader. I'm gonna be working on a new script for a Revolutionary Reader. There was a vote for Black Panther, coming to the Black Panther Party for the next video. So I've been working on that a little bit. And Tuesday we have a special guest that we're going to be interviewing, Iramiel Sefrempong, the funky academic. So that should be very fun. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that. That's what, Tuesday at
2.
Yes. So looking forward to that. Yeah, we'll be interviewing him. Looking forward to meeting him.
I gotta still come up with some questions.
Same.
Yeah, that's what I'll be working on for the next. Thank you, Ware. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Elise. Thank you, Ware, and thank you, Joseph. I think they were here for a little bit.
Yeah, new name, so that's great.
A new person didn't recognize, so it's always good to have a new person. But we'll see you guys next week. We'll see you guys next week at the exact same time that we usually start, which is at 3 p.m. Today was just a Mother's Day special, so we had to get some things done. But hope everybody has a good Sunday night, and we'll see you next time.